The Naeco, which is ocean spelled backwards, was sunk March 23, 1942 by U-124 Capitan Lieutenant Moore. Captain Lieutenant Moore was also noted for sinking the E.M. Clark, the S.O. Nashville, the Papoose, and the W.E. Hutton off the banks of North Carolina. The Naeco, which is what this dive contains, the stern section of the Naeco, sank in about 140 feet of water. The bow section is about 6 or 7 miles away from the stern section. These are banded butterfly fish to the left of the lionfish there and Scott Fats. This is the first time I've ever seen these banded butterflies here off the North Carolina coast. I've seen them diving in the Caribbean, but never in North Carolina. And we have spot-tailed butterflies here in North Carolina, but this is the first time I've seen banded butterflies. When we first got down on the wreck, we were tied into the port boiler, which is the boiler I'm over now, and the starboard boiler is straight ahead behind the diver there. And I couldn't figure out which boiler was out of alignment, so I couldn't determine which way was front. But this is the cradle right here where that starboard boiler should rest. There's a big empty space here in the wreck, and this is where that starboard boiler belongs. Once I figured out the starboard boiler was the one that was off, I was able to find the engine and gain orientation as to which way was stern and which way was forward on the wreck. Another cool thing was there were a lot of cleaning stations and wrasses, and right here in a second I'm going to pan over to a wrasse, and you can see the fish opening his mouth. Come clean out my mouth, come clean out my mouth. That was going on all over the wreck. This is the engine to my right here. We were just over the starboard boiler where the wrasses were cleaning out the fish, and this is the engine to my right, and now I'm swimming slow toward the stern, hoping to find the steering quadrant, so I know that I'm right. Once I have the steering quadrant, the engine, and the boilers, then I know my orientation on the wreck, and I can get on the trigger and go explore this whole wreck site. This large piece of machinery here is the steering quadrant. This is the piece of machinery that actually turned the rudder of the Naeco. And below this, if you follow it straight down, would be the rudder. The rudder and the propeller appear to be buried in the sand. And you see these beams here on the stern, which these were structural support beams on the fantail of the Naeco. And the actual propeller and rudder appears to be buried in the sand. The fantail rises just above the sand, so the very rear of the ship appear to be under the level of the sand. There's this real pretty white coralline growth growing on these pieces, these structural members from the fantail, and they're also growing on the steering quadrant. And it really glowed. The video doesn't do it justice, because in person these things were like glowing white. It was eerie. Trigger time! Alright, so now I'm scootering up toward the front. That's Andy Beeline right there, looking at the engine, checking it out. Here's the out of the orientation starboard boiler, and I'm on my way toward the brake. This is the main brake at deck level, just forward of the engines and boiler. You know, there's, I don't know, maybe 150 feet of the stern that's intact and remaining, but it appeared there was a lot more of the ship on the port side than on the starboard side, almost as if it broke diagonally, which is a little bit different than the pictures look at the stern when the stern was still afloat on the surface. But it appears appears to be a diagonal break. And here now the camera's panning over to what looks like gunnel on the port side, and then I scooted all the way up the gunnel to the very end of the debris field here, but there was some minor debris field ahead of this. This is about the forwardmost of the debris field on the port side of the Naeco, and I'm getting ready to turn around and scoot back. That's Kate and Randy. This is the engine coming up right here, right there. That's the engine, and then down there is Scott Fats. There's the steering quadrant again, so I'm back on the stern. It took me 1 minute to scooter from the forwardmost part of the wreckage back to the stern, so that scooter really closes things up. Goodbye, Naeco. We hope to see you again. That's a dive boat over 100 feet above us. It was a beautiful day.